and maybe they have, I'm pretty sure that these corporate services interface a lot with our taxpayers, and the quality of the services that we deliver to taxpayers may depend a lot on them. For example, the existence of a good customer relationship management may help our departments that interface with the taxpayers to present an image and a face which is positive in terms of us as tax administration. So if there's any work that's been done on that, I would love to hear. Secondly, about the data governance, I laud the efforts that has been made. I strongly agree with the idea of having a common template. I would like to ask if it's possible that administrations that are quite advanced in the development of their DGs, those that are ready, if they could share with us their own DG documents, so that we can get an idea of the content. As you said in your presentation, we have just hired a consultant to work with us on this work, in this domain, and it may be of great interest for us. It is of great interest for us as an administration to learn from what you've already developed without having to reinvent the wheel. Even the wording, just seeing how thorough, what kind of details you're adding in as you're fleshing out the outline of the document. I don't know if the template that you're talking about is not simply the outline, but there's also some text added to it. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, then we would love to see that as soon as possible before this consultant goes on too far in their work. So these are the two interventions. What do we do about corporate and support services? I'm looking at HR management. I know that some have very good ERP systems. On the finance side, the customer relationship management I did mention. What do we have in terms of supporting the investigative function of our administration, internal audit, the integrity of our employees, and so on. So is there like some template that you have, or can we have a comparative analysis also for those to see if those other functions are also efficient and supported by IT properly? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please take note of those very important questions and you respond at once. Yes, CG Zanzibar.
Thank you, Chairman. I also commend the good presentation, particularly on data governance policy. We yet don't have the policy, but I connect this with the domestic tax system. The question might be why we don't make use of data. One of the challenges which they have pointed out is data integrity. And this can be connected to the development of systems. Why do we have data that have questionable integrity? I think we can share when we develop the system, what are the controls we can make to improve data integrity. You see, somebody uses the data and they bring no value. And that might lead into not using the data which we have in our system. So we need to find solutions for why we don't use this data. So I think among of them is data integrity. I would recommend the team to have a common way on how we improve the integrity in our system. Of course, for us, we have homegrown development of systems. Ours, we had the earlier one, now we have the new one. It has the common features similar to other regions. So if we improve that, will help us. But the idea of adopting the governance policy, I second it, Chairman. We need to have a common data governance policy. But having it is one thing, and using it, that's the most challenging. I also support the idea of having a dedicated team for usage of these data. Because one of the causes for dispute is having an informed decision, especially on making assessments and determining whether these taxpayers are compliant or not. So we need to have that template, and I recommend we adopt that data governance policy draft. And whenever we find there will be some areas to improve, we may improve based on the respective partner states. But this is a good move, and this is going to help us to boost more revenue, because once we use the data, we will improve tax compliance in our regions. And we'll be making informed decisions, and the decisions will raise the collection of taxes. So I commend for this move, and I recommend we adopt the data policy governance. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Comrade Juma. I want to pick one or two questions from this side, and we'll respond at once. Yes, Jonathan, and then Alan. Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank Jacob for that good presentation. I would like to comment on the two, on the system acquisition and also data governance. But let me start with data governance. The biggest challenge, I think, in most of the tax administration is the skills gap. Because I think what is being done and what has been done since the introduction of computers, these computers are just used for aggregation of data. You're just adding up revenue collections from the different stations and transactions. You compare it with the target and you identify the gaps, but we should go beyond that. Because what they call data machine learning, we need to, I think, to boost the skills or even to look at the curriculum. As of now, we can also start by getting training services from our side, because there are advanced algorithms that are used for analysis. For example, there is what they call decision trees, association rules. These have been applied by the private sector. I'll give you an example that supermarkets analyze goods which are purchased together. You can use that same technique to analyze customs data using HS codes to find out which, in a consignment, what are the associated, in terms of probability, goods. Just by using HS codes, they can inform you on what decision to take when you are determining whether consignments need to be inspected for risk management. Because that example from the supermarkets is that they have identified unique purchases. For example, there's a high association of purchasing of Pampers and beer, and on particular dates. So it is an indicator that if you are to arrange a supermarket, you have to put those goods close together to ease, because that's a pattern of the consumers. So you can use the same technique on customs data. You analyze customs data using that. And also there's what they call decision trees. Decision trees is like sort of a multivariate analysis where the system generates for you if statements. For example, if goods are from a particular country, then you use also other parameters and you determine the risks that are involved in, say, those particular goods, use that combination of variables. So there is need to boost the capacity of data analysis in the revenue administration. And I think you need to invest there. Yeah. Now, on the acquisition of systems, the CG KRA raised an important point that how do you determine, for example, a system which has matured? Now, when you're procuring a system, these days, system procurement is driven by both internal and external factors. External factors, so far what we have gone through today, in the last 2 days, that when you talk about the tax administration system has to link into the taxpayers system and other players in that field. They have to link into exchange information with banks. Now, when you need to carry out what they call a gap analysis, you analyze what your system is doing now, what you want to do as a business, what are the trends outside in the industry. These can guide you in determining where you are and the gaps that exist in the current system you are having. That's when you tell whether your system has matured. And at times, there are two options that you can take. You can go for a full-blown acquisition of a system, or you develop what we call a middleware to fill in those gaps. Because we are talking about cost optimization. When you develop a middleware, it can do the same, fill that gap without incurring a lot of expenses. So those are the two areas I wanted to comment on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alan?
My first comment is about data is really an output of the processes. So in terms of data integrity, the only way you can resolve it is by looking at your processes, because this is just an output of the processes. In URA, we have a policy in place which is still under review. Okay, we've gone through it the first cycle. We are reviewing, it's supposed to be reviewed every after 2 years, so we are at that stage where we are reviewing it. We also have a data governance committee, which is really comprised of members from different departments for ownership, because data is a corporate asset. Now, the challenge we are having at the moment is that as we do through the data warehouse, do the BI, when the visibility that comes out is not easily accepted or owned, if I may say. For example, you see, because data is going to show you what is in the process. Stakeholders and maybe some areas in URA, they do not really, even if the data shows this, they obviously come out saying, no, that's not true. That's a data issue. That's not, we can't have that kind of indicator. So I think what I'm requesting is to share, get from your experience, how do you make the different persons really take on the challenges that the data is showing out, as opposed to when the data says this, we all run up and say, no, it's the data issue, it's the data that is wrong. Accepting that visibility is the challenge we are having at the moment. Then in regards to a common platform for the DTD, yes, this will be cost effective. We just need to have a lead time during which we can initiate the project and get this running. However, we need to note that this may come out as an off-the-shelf kind of system for all of us, but we still need to customize it due to the differences in our processes as well as the differences in our legal platforms. It may not be a straight plug and play that we have this regional system which anyone can just get and use. Within our local authorities, there may be need to tweak it here and there. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Jacob, you can use the remaining 3 minutes to respond to these many questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, CGs and the colleagues. So CGKRA asked, what are the other revenue authorities doing? And my commissioner also asked about that. And this is, of course, very important. Of course, we have to be alive to the fact that there is no revenue authority that is standing still. And that actually also just adds to the point that we need to make a decision about this, because the next time we meet, probably other decisions will have been made within our revenue authorities. So that is very important. We know that KRA have the source code, RRA have the source code, and TRA also had their own system. Now, URA is considering, of course, also upgrading, as we are also doing the same. So I think it will be very important to be able to make this decision quickly. It's not an easy decision, and I think even single customs territory had the push from our heads of state. That is why it got the impetus that it had and it was actually implemented. So the good thing is we're operating from where we have a proof of concept. We've had a situation where as revenue authorities, we've come together, developed a common solution and been able to benefit from it. So I think that as far as other areas are doing, yes, it's something we can sit and be able to report on that in the next meeting. The CG RRA asks about the support. The acting CG RRA asks about the support and efficiency of ICT. The CRM integration, ERP systems, the systems used for internal audit and investigations and so on. So we can also do a comparative analysis of those. And the support is a very important component of this because you can have a very good system, but if you don't support it very well in terms of dealing with customer issues, that can be a big challenge. For us as KRA, we have a CRM solution integrated with our systems, both ICMS and iTax, and it can pull the taxpayer information. So that is very important. We will be able to do a comparative analysis on that and give you some feedback. And also regarding the data governance template, yes, it is not just a skeleton. It actually has some text that can be modified. And so it is actually fleshed out. It's not just a skeleton. So we'll be able to share that with you. What are some of the controls we can put in place to have data integrity? As Alan has indicated, of course, the data is just an output of a process. So we need to define our processes very well. Also make sure data is validated before it is actually stored. So those are some of the things we can do to ensure that the data integrity is improved. Jonathan mentioned about the skills gap. Very true. What has happened with us is that we got a data warehouse and business intelligence system, and we actually hire skilled people to be able to run these solutions. But we improve the skills, and of course they keep getting poached. So like right now, for example, in Kenya, between Safaricom and KRA, we have a lot of poaching going on back and forth as far as the ICT experts. And then the system, of course, will be customized. And I think when we are talking about the common DTD system, I think the best sort of analogy or example I can use is the Asikuda example. The system is going to have the common core systems for DTD, and then it has to be developed in a way that it will require customization or be amenable to customization so that it can accommodate the unique circumstances of each revenue authority or domestic tax administration. Thank you so much for this opportunity and for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Jacob, first of all, thank you very much, you and your committee, for the excellent presentation and research. I think it's very important that we agree on key decisions from this presentation, because this is the heart of what we do. We can either succeed or fail because of the systems we have in place and the policies. So on the side of systems, as you've seen from Jacob's report, a number of countries are at different levels. That required a bit of detail, which we believe your committee can add on, where we are at with where the different tax administrations are with their systems, the challenges and the strength. That could be an enhancement in the report. However, for those countries that we now know at the point of acquiring new systems, like the case of KRA, Uganda, and maybe those that are also trying to acquire new systems for the first time, like South Sudan, can we agree that we work together and we make sure that the systems we are acquiring, one, preferably if we can get one common system that can be customized, we do that, but we work together that way so that our people who are involved, like the commissioner ITs in each of these tax administration, knows that he will not proceed alone without consulting and knowing where Kenya is, or South Sudan is, or any other country in the region which is trying to acquire, so that we in tandem, we walk together that journey. CG James, you found me trying to narrow on the decision points out of this presentation, and the first one is on the acquisition of systems. Those countries that are trying to acquire, can we agree to work together and make sure that we get the best system for our respective countries? But also on the issue of data governance policy, I think we have agreed that the template that has been prepared by this committee is shared with all of us. And even if there is need for more detail, like if Rwanda wants to have the full policy, data governance policy for Uganda or KRA, I think we agree in principle here that that can be shared. Because there is nothing really to hide in this. We want something good. Maybe as we share it, you'll also point to us where there are gaps that we may not have seen. So we approve their proposal, that they have, we approve the sharing of the template that they have prepared, but we also agree that we'll share any more details between our respective administrations once contacted. These are my thoughts, but I invite my colleagues to improve on them, on how we conclude this, so that it is clearly documented, even in our communique today, how we are going to move in this area of data.
Chair.
Yes, James.
I'm still not getting clarity on the way we are going to move on the system issue. Because I was hoping that this team, backed up by our heads of ICT, can develop what is it that we are looking for. Now that you have also confirmed it, that yours is being retired, just like ours. How do we move forward? Do we ask this team, together with our heads of ICT, in a month's time to tell us what is it that we want? What are the systems requirements of the kind of a system we want? What will drive our business for the next 5 years? They will develop the requirements, what kinds of functionalities, capacities, abilities does it need? Once we have that in a month's time and we see, then they should tell us, which option is better? Is it a development, or is it outsourcing from someone else? Once we take those two decisions, then we will be able now to formally engage our heads of states, because they need to come at their level and adopt that and commission it. That way we shall have clarity, because right now even as we are at the state of asking what kind of a system do we need, what should be the functionalities, abilities, capacities, everything. What are we looking for? We know where we are. I know when I go to file my returns how I feel inconvenienced with my iTax. But I know he's an old person. There is so much the person can do and has so much. So my team is right now working with our Ministry of ICT to define, because that's why I said the heads of ICT, because they're already involved in the other process internally, and now this team, then they must have within a time to tell us what is it that we are looking for. And then, is it preferred that we develop locally through our developers, because they are there, they have the capacity, or is it something is there something we can get out there that will serve our need? And if we are to get it, then customize it, what is the process? If we are to develop internally, what is the process? In a month's time, they should be able to give us something that we can listen virtually. Because now, like he said, by the time we meet in another EARACG, decisions will have been taken. this is the time to see how we can think of that, put our teams together. There is already a subcommittee tasking with our heads of ICT. In a month's time, they will tell us what we need to do.
Excellent.
So that there is clarity. When they address those issues, then we would know. If they would tell us that, yes, there is a system that is working very, very, very well in India, then we would ask ourselves, is this something we can develop locally? Sometimes we can get it from on government to government and modify it. You don't have even to buy. There will be modalities like I was supported by Rwanda on a government to government. And even India can support East Africa. America can do it. Anybody else can do it. And then, but the most important thing is to know what is it that we are looking for, where is it, the requirements, where is it, is it available out there, is it something we must develop locally? And within a month, then we take that decision. So if it can't work, we stop this agenda. We go to another one. That's right. We go our own separate ways, but we tried.
Thank you very much, Comrade James. I think there was no better way of putting this. I just want to be sure that our technical people have clearly understood this and they are ready to run with it. Robert, do you have a comment? We are giving you 1 month to work with this committee and all your colleagues to come up with a way forward.
Well, from the side of URA, we know the scope of what we're looking for. So we can harmonize and be able to come up with a position. I am not very sure, though, with our friends in South Sudan, because many of these conversations, like they earlier said, they've not been part of them, but yet they have a good need, and it would be good to handhold them on this.
Those that are ready can move on so that we take this decision. I'm sure Commissioner CG Rwanda here will communicate back on this. Because we are not doing anything, we are just putting our teams together to look at what kind of a system are we looking at? What is it that we are looking at? And looking at those questions I've said, that is something they can present us within a month. Yeah. And I'm sure we will have a better picture than we have today, because they will have done some work. If they need to go to 1 or 2 countries, we can fund them. I don't mind myself if they want to go to 1 or 2 countries where those things are, after holding virtual meetings and they feel that they have to see things physically, we will send them there. And then we have a better picture.
So thank you very much. Let's agree on that very clear recommendation. Yes, CG Juma, you want to say something? Please yes. Come in now.
I just want to improve it. We have recommended the presentation, and they have just indicated the similarity of the systems. And I agree that these domestic tax systems have similar processes. So the idea is good to have a team working together, but we may improve that team by having some business people within the IT people, so that we know what do we need in our domestic tax systems and whether the existing tax systems can offer what do we need. And if they cannot offer, what are they missing? We have a complete system which includes even the missing one. And then the next important question will come whether do we develop on our own or do we just go off the shelf and buy it? So we need to add to what do we need, and that cannot just come from the ICT people. We need also to have the business people. Because currently we have our own systems, and the inconvenience you have is the result of the missing of certain function in the system. And that can be well determined by the people in the business. So we have that 1 month. We can have the ICT and some of the business people. And for those who have already have the system in place, the new one, then they may improve from what will be presented from that system. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Comrade Juma, for that enhancement. So our ICT team, our ICT heads, please work around the clock. This is urgent. At the end of this, after 1 month, which is about this time next month, we will be expecting a report, a clear report that has all the requirements for our systems that we are looking for, and a clear recommendation on which route to take, whether we are going to develop one internally or whether we are going to acquire one, and which one, so that we can move forward. It's very, very important. So I agree that the time sounds short, but we can fit that, especially given that for most of us are already somewhere. So let those who are not, who have not yet covered that ground share, and you also support them when we get this requirement. I think we need to move to the next engagement. Thank you so much, Jacob. You can take your seat. I will now invite the next presentation, which should be much briefer, and this is from Ms. Cleopatra. You forgot to say Asante Sana. Oh, Asante Sana. Thank you very much, Jacob. Definitely, your team deserves a round of applause. Thank you very much. Cleo, how many minutes do you want? 10? And then we'll use the other.
I'll attempt to use the 10.
10 is
Chair.
okay. Thank you.
Chairperson of this EARACG conference, Commissioners General of the regional tax authorities, senior leadership, management of the tax authorities, our ESC representative, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'll be making a presentation on a proposal regarding the importation of non-commercialized cars for revenue agency staff. I'll start by providing a brief background to this proposal. I will attempt to provide a cost-benefit analysis, and then in a very short while, we will agree on the way forward for this proposal. Now, by way of background, this proposal is a result of the discussions in the 47th EARACG's meeting held on the 30th to 31st of January 2020, in which the CGs approved a report on the staff motivation incentives and observed the need to carry out a cost-benefit analysis on one of the proposals made. The CGs agreed that the tax administrations are continuously operating in a rapidly changing environment that requires innovative, agile, and dynamic staff that are highly motivated. And so RAs must continuously attract, engage, and motivate the staff in order for us to realize our goals. The report presented 13 recommendations as presented, and I'll quickly provide an update on the progress to purpose for the 12 that were approved. And if you look at the presentation, in terms of introduction of hardship allowances for staff in the regional offices, we have made strides with a bit of work to do. Free airtime and data allowances for staff as they conduct their assignments. has been covered by at least 4 out of the 6 RAs represented here. The data shows that in terms of meals, lunch specifically for staff, only URA has made progress. In terms of incentivizing staff through the payment of performance bonuses, we have made progress with the exception of OBR that has recently frozen this benefit. In terms of enhancing our coaching and mentoring programs to develop our staff, we are all on track with the OBR having a proposal that is being considered by management. In terms of having induction and orientation programs for our staff as we recruit them, we are doing well and we are all on board. In terms of rotation programs for our staff and payment of allowances as we move them, we are doing well with the exception of ZRA that has a proposal on table as well, being considered by their management. In terms of looking at our work environment and providing office space, staff housing, especially at the border stations, all RAs are cleared. This has been done. In terms of having innovation frameworks in place and recognizing as well as rewarding staff that participate in the innovations, we are doing well. However, there is a lot of work to be done. It's 50%. We have indication, however, that the frameworks are in place, just pending management consideration and approval of the reward mechanisms. We observe that for number 10, all RAs have a provision for medical cover. However, we have not enforced the annual medical checkup to get data that helps us monitor and track the health status of our staff. So we have the framework, but there is no enforcement of this. We also observe that in terms of having a clinic with personnel at HQ and the bigger regional offices, there is progress with a lot of room for improvement. We also recognize that the RAs are taking effort to motivate and incentivize their staff by continuously developing and building their competencies, and that the RAs have competency frameworks in place, and some have actually proceeded to the assessment state. And so here we observe that OBR, URA, TRA are on course, with the others having frameworks under review and pending management consideration. And the final one, which is access to the importation of a duty-free, non-commercialized vehicle every 10 years, is what we are going to look at today. So overall, we are looking at an average of 58.2 performance, and we will continuously conduct assessments to monitor the progress of these initiatives as we go forward. So, the importation of a non-commercialized vehicle for staff every 10 years. We have obtained that data from the different revenue agencies, and this data is premised on a couple of assumptions. One, that for every year, we would plan to see an uptake of at least 20% of our staff. Two, we have presented that data in a way that presents a mutually beneficial proposal. That whereas we want to give our staff the benefit of non-import duty tax cars, we are also looking at the tax payable by them when they actually bring these cars on board. And so if we follow through one of the cases, for example, you'll see that in the first column we have categories of our staff. We we have senior management, middle management, officers, and our support staff. We have provided a value, an estimated value of the cars that they would be able to afford given their current salary scales. We would then look at the import duty directly related to the cost of the vehicle that is provided. We have indicated the estimated uptake, and we've presented 20% for every year. We've also indicated that if, for example, and I'll use the example of, if you would follow with me, KRA at the top, we are looking at the officer. If the officer imports a vehicle at $20,000, import duty is at $5,000 there, and given the number of staff in KRA, 20% of the officers would be 1,188, and then that would be the amount of import duty for those staff. Now, the proposal is that government or the revenue agencies undertake that cost through a remission, and then the staff will be still eligible to pay the other taxes that come with this importation. We've also presented a net effect at the end, showing that whereas the government would pay tax, the individuals would also incur tax, and the net effect is presented as well. So this is the mutually beneficial presentation. It's not a tax-free proposal completely. It's a mutually beneficial presentation of the benefits to government as well as the benefits to the staff. And in doing this, we've indicated that the government and the revenue agencies would therefore benefit by minimizing absenteeism of their staff who spend a lot of time in public transport. I'd like to just remind us of the urgency to mobilize revenue, and in the opening remarks of the CGKRA, he indicated that every minute, every day counts, and so every minute lost in public transport on the way to work is a dent on the revenue that we seek. We also think that the benefit will assist staff on vehicles as a motivation and retention scheme. We also believe that this proposal will enhance staff safety, security, and facilitate them move from office to office. We also conducted an analysis of the current programs in place to support our staff move from home to office and back. And we realized that whereas largely the senior management staff have been facilitated, the rest of staff have not been facilitated in this regard. And so they still have to cater to their transport to and from work. And then we also indicated that another benefit may be that staff use these vehicles as part of the mileage scheme. And this is really discretionary effort where if I am a staff and I have a case to handle urgently and there is no vehicle at that time, I will use this car, this facility that I have now, and claim the mileage subsequently. So I will not say there is no transport, and so I will not take up this assignment. And that's discretionary effort that we are looking at. So overall, we are looking at redeemed productivity and focus on revenues for the time gained. We are looking at an enhanced employee value proposition and thereby increased stability at the workplace, focus on the mandate, engagement, and retention. We are also looking at the potential increment in car importation if we see our staff take up this benefit. We considered the current supporting laws and regulations, regulatory frameworks in the RS, and we observed that for this benefit to be implemented, KRA has none, OBR has none. We also recognize that for the RRS staff, there is a ministerial instruction that currently makes the provision for the senior management executives in RS as well as other senior public service officials to benefit from this facility. We acknowledge that URA has none, and we also establish that TRA and ZRA have a government notice number 520 that provides for this facility under the Customs Management and Tariff Act. So this has been done in some places. Our recommendation is therefore that the revenue authorities that currently do not provide this facility should introduce it, and those with partial implementation for the senior management staff should extend it to the rest of the staff, and that this should be presented to the Minister of Finance for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cleopatra, for that presentation. It's indeed a very interesting one. I was hearing a lot of discussion within the audience as you are going on. So let me invite some quick questions and comments. Just because we are hard pressed by time, let's keep our questions very brief and any comments. And especially I would like to hear from those who are already extending this facility to their staff. How that has gone with the leaders and the public, and also how it has increased the staff motivation and productivity. Okay. Yes, James Sabola. And then another hand after him. Who is that one? Allen. Okay, EARACG. Okay, the brother from NRA. Okay, in that order, please. James first.
Chair, in line with what you mentioned that you like to hear from the other RAs that are already having the scheme, I would also want to know the capacity of the staff to pay for the vehicles, even with the scheme, because I think this scheme could be difficult for if the basic pay is not adequate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cleo, for that presentation. Yes, I believe it can improve motivation of the staff, but I'm thinking if we put it as a tax exemption, it will impact tax expenditure and may have some negative impact at a government level, at least in our case, because tax expenditures are a hot cake on our side. However, I think if we make it like URA promises to pay on behalf of the staff, so it's not an exemption as per se, but it's a cost that URA as an organization is undertaking, part of their normal, our normal expenditure. That would be the best. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning, the Commissioner Generals and Commissioners and colleagues and everyone. I have one small observation. Cleopatra, you presented very well, a very interesting topic. First, in your mathematics there, the schedule of the analysis, you mentioned USD. But in the details, you didn't mention anything. I didn't know whether it is USD or shillings, but that is not the problem. Now, my contribution here, take an example of the SADC region. What they do, they normally look at your pay structure. They tell you you have this limit of the type of vehicle that you can get. Then, through your ministry, you get a check, and the money is deducted from your salary at source. Before you even get your salary, the amount will be deducted. And they make sure that you have enough money to sustain your family. Yeah. So that limits you to the type of car that you cannot go and buy a Mercedes-Benz when your salary can buy a Corolla.
True.
So the way forward, it's a good thing, it's interesting. Our side here, East Africa, is a cash environment. People who have money, like what Ibrahim says, the big boys. The big boys with money can buy anything they want. Or the big ladies. So that can be looked into. You can come up with a policy on how to do it. It's a good thing. If you can't buy a car, you can buy a motorbike. It's not a big deal. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, KRA, comrade.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for a good presentation. I'm looking at the car exemption, which is not 100% exemption, but a shared responsibility. And I'm just thinking about considerations that are alternative to that pure exemption bit. And I'm thinking about the car loans, the low interest car loans that may not necessarily need to go to a higher levels for approval, but only requires management and board approvals. If that saving that we are considering can be factored in so that it lowers the interest, it becomes a low interest car loan for staff as opposed to an exemption type of an importation. And even looking at it even going further, would we be considering an exemption for car or a mortgage for staff? I don't know how that consideration may, in terms of priority for staff motivation. Thank you.
Very good points. So Cleopatra, okay, Patience, and then we'll return back.
Thank you, CG. Thank you so much, Cleo, for the presentation. My concern, of course, is the debate that we are having around exemptions, particularly from Parliament, even from the ministries. So I was thinking that possibly if you could also look at other forms or other incentives. And what came to my mind is the fact that if the RAs could consider getting the buses that would possibly be able to transport the staff, in all the different regions, of course, that would be a decision that the different administrations would take. But something like that as well could be a benefit and could also improve on the motivation of the staff. So that we have a wide range of options to consider as opposed to having only one. So that if one fails, then at least we have a fallback position on something else that could be considered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think those are very good points that have come through. Cleopatra, you'll be asked to make a quick response, but maybe also just to add on, because this subject of incentives and exemptions is very controversial, and I think as revenue administrations, we are at the forefront of not supporting exemptions. They take away the little that would be collecting. So I don't know how it will look if we are the ones to propose this. But also if we are to propose it, should it be just for the revenue administrators only, or it should cut across other civil servants? I mean, you've looked at the ministerial directive in Rwanda. It's not just for RRA, it is for others. And maybe CG may want to add some comments on how that is working. Otherwise, it will appear like revenue administrations are only minding or advancing their interests and not any other. Do you want to say something, CG, before we return it to Leo?
Yes, thank you. In the case of Rwanda, it's only some senior level public officials. At some point, it was from the level of director and up. I think they've raised it from the level of director general and up now. Given the fact that titles are not the same in all institutions, we actually have a job classification system implemented by the ministry in charge of public labor. So there's a certain level and up which can benefit from this lump sum, this modality for being able to acquire a vehicle. And depending on the grade, there is loan which can be allocated, depending on the grade, to the person. So the second thing is these vehicles are they're exempted on certain duties, so import duties, up to a certain level, and then the government signs a co-ownership. You actually sign a co-ownership with the government, with the Ministry of Finance, for Ministry of Infrastructure, I think. I don't remember, finance, or both of them, yes. It's a tripartite agreement, and it's a co-ownership kind of contract, which shall only be completed, and you get the full ownership, I think, after 5 years, after working for 5 years for the government. If you have to leave the government before, you'll be required to repay I think the import taxes up to a certain level on a pro rata basis. So it's been a very good scheme until now, at least for the high level stuff. But the proposal which is here, which tends to go to the low level stuff, the feasibility of it in certain countries, as I was saying to CG, EARACG, the thing is, the government wants to give an equal and fair treatment to all institutions, not only revenue authorities. So it may be a bit difficult, I can speak for Rwanda, to introduce a demand specific for revenue authorities, unless we have evidence from other East African countries that do that, that we can stand on. But otherwise, in our case, it's going to be extremely difficult to request it specifically for the tax administration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that guidance. Cleo, you want to make some quick
Very
response?
quickly, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chair. In response to the comment from Mr. James Abola about the basic pay not being able to even stretch to this facility, we completely agree with you, and we have the data from our brothers that have it in TRA, ZRA. We looked at the uptake of this scheme over the past 2 years, and the numbers are dismal. And the reason the uptake is low is because the staff don't have the capability to actually use the facility. And so that is something that actually came through. We also, and I'd like to join this response to what came through from KRA, we also looked at data from our partners in KRA, who, instead of this, have provided a car loan option, a very good facility that is dedicated to the staff getting a car. And so this is another option that could be considered by the CGs instead of going this route. To my colleague from NRA, yes, all the figures are in USD, and the first column was looking at base pay, and so it looked at what you can possibly afford at your rank, given the amount of money that you have, without leaving you at zero. You'd still have to maintain a particular amount of money to look at your daily needs. So that was done. Alan, thank you so much. We take this feedback, and I know that even as we had the discussion, HOD Uganda proposed that we consider looking at having this as part of our benefits portfolios, and the authorities then incur the costs of this remission that is being proposed. And then finally, we received a proposal on buses as an option, as a way of motivating our staff. But again, the way that buses work is that you have staff seated on those buses, maybe collecting a few more people on those routes. There is no flexibility. If, for example, I'm a highly motivated staff and I'd like to start early, I can't go to start on the business of revenue mobilization because I'm waiting for the bus. So again, productivity for the revenue agency is not catered to. We will take the option of the mortgage. We will consider that. The data did not bring it up as a priority, but I think it's something worth considering. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Cleopatra. Asante sana. Let me now invite the chair of the technical committee to do a wrap-up of this session so that we can tuck in this before we move to the next presentation. Well done, Cleopatra. It was a very tough topic that you are given. Look at those comments that you've been given, enhance them. Look at the other incentives which are not taking off, where no country is implementing. Maybe you knock them off the list, and you keep us posted on how we are doing. We want our staff to be very motivated. Thank you. Yes, Chair, we welcome you. Chair, Technical Committee.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm here to present on behalf of the Chair of the Technical Committee. My name is Joseph Serengo, Secretary to the EARACG. We just want to take you through the implementation of the previous recommendations that were approved by the earlier EARACG's meetings, just to appreciate some of the outputs that that have emanated from this forum and implemented and changed, really impacted revenue administration at the revenue authorities. Yeah, so the first one is we had a recommendation on the RS to develop and implement standard guidelines to conduct criminal tax investigations, train investigators on standard approaches and use of inspectors beyond borders. These recommendations was approved in July 2019, and it was aimed at enhancing efficiency in approaching and handling criminal tax investigations for more revenue generation. So various revenue authorities, particularly KRA and TRA, developed and continue to implement these standard guidelines for conducting criminal tax investigations. Rwanda Revenue Authority has also embarked on training on postgraduate diploma in tax investigation, and they have also done an assessment of established standards in their jurisdiction on this. Uganda Revenue Authority has a maturity assessment done based on the 10 global principles of fighting tax crimes. They are also working with the tax investigators without borders for criminal investigations to ensure gaps identified are addressed. OBR has finalized the maturity assessment, and they presented during their just concluded the Commissioners of Tax Investigation meeting. Zanzibar Revenue Authority are yet to develop and implement these guidelines, but they are working on them. Chair, the second recommendation was RS to automate processes in order to strengthen prevention of corrupt practices. This was issued in December 2018, and it was to simplify major processes in tax administration, including taxpayer registration, return filing, timely payments, and audits to ascertain the correctness of the tax paid and enhance compliance and minimize corrupt practices. So here we report that KRA, RRA, and TRA automated all their domestic tax and customs processes. URA, their tax registration process was simplified through the instant tax identification number service. They also upgraded the e-filing system from Excel format to web-based, and so far implemented for the provisional income tax return. OBR have taxpayers registration, filing, payment, debt management, audit and audit selection, not yet automated, but they are working on this. And so far they have limited contact between, they are trying to implement this so that they limit the contact between tax auditors and taxpayers. However, they have designed an online service for reporting corruption and other corrupt practices. ZRA, the tax registration, filing, payment, debt management, audit and audit selection process have been automated in their new domestic taxes system. And they have also integrated with their other systems, including their customs system. The third recommendation is to address taxation of the digital economy. This was issued in November 2020. This was in recognition to the fact that the economy is becoming more digitalized, and therefore the need to ensure that the tax net is expanded and also address the gaps in the legal framework in terms of definition, identification of players, business models, and leverage on technology and build technical skills. Here we reported that KRA developed the legal framework that brought the digital economy into the tax net. Rwanda, in conjunction with the ETAF, is undertaking a study to establish the impact and estimated tax from digital services. At the TRA, the legal framework for taxing the digital economy was passed by Parliament in June 2022, and administration system is also in place. At URA, the VAT Act was amended in July 2021 to provide for filing of returns by non-resident suppliers. And in June 2022, a public notice was issued for non-residents to collect, file, and pay taxes on electronic transactions. URA has also developed regulations for administration of digital economy, and these regulations are awaiting approval. ZRA, the Act for Taxing the Digital Economy, was done and enacted in June 2022, and regulations were signed in August 2022. The tax system, for OBR, the tax system fails to properly allocate taxing rights over distribution or sales activities due to lack of tools, facilities, and technical skills to capture those sophisticated transactions. But as I mentioned earlier, they are also working on this. The fourth recommendation was on the RAs to use alternative dispute resolutions mechanisms to unlock revenue. This was issued in November 2022, and we reported that KRA had already an alternative dispute resolution framework in place prior to this recommendation, and the East African Community ADR framework was largely borrowed from the KRA framework. RRA has a dispute resolution mechanism that is embedded in its amicable settlement procedure. TRA, the Tax Revenues Appeals Act, was amended in 2021 to accommodate the ADR, and in this current financial year, they have had 21 cases under ADR that were settled out of court for the during the period July to December, with a revenue impact of 45 billion Tanzanian shillings. URA had the Tax Procedure Code amended in 2021 to include provision for settling disputes through ADR, and they have also had an impact of 365 billion shillings and $10.5 million US collected through this. They have prepared the Tax Procedure Code regulations and are awaiting approval by the Ministry of Finance. At OBR, the Tax Procedures Act was amended in 2020, and it does not contain provisions relating to alternative dispute resolution. Amendments to the Tax Procedures Act are being worked on so that they propose this for enactment. Zanzibar Revenue Authority amended the Tax Appeals Act to accommodate the ADR, and implementation is ongoing. Chair, number 5 is on the RS were directed to undertake a comprehensive review of the East African Community Common External Tariff, and this was made with a view to update the classifications of imported products and the existing rates. Here we report that in response to this recommendation, the Council of Ministers enacted the comprehensive review of the CET in May 2022. The CET mapping in line with the World Customs Organization version 2022, the customs tools adopted 4 bands, that is 0% for raw materials or raw products, 10% for intermediate products, 25% for finished products, and that 5% for sensitive items. The revised CET increased the tariff lines from 5,683 in 2017 to 5,955 in 2022, following the tariff splitting and transposition, which means that now more items are covered within the CET. The review also involved software identification and classification. OBR experts participated in the process for the review of the CET in line with the version 2022, and OBR has split the tariff code for medicine and medical equipment to separate those from human use. Chair, number 6 recommendation was to conduct lifestyle audits to improve staff integrity in the RS. This directive was given in 2020, and we know that integrity impacts the success of tax administration. It guarantees quality of services as well as exceeding client expectations. It needs to identify integrity shortfalls and determine appropriate strategies to deter the occurrences of such behavior. The recommendation was made. Here we report that at KRA there is a special division for ethics and integrity comprising vetting and lifestyle audit, among others. RRA lifestyle audit framework was approved by management as part of the integrity control mechanism. At TRA, anti-corruption strategy to fight corruption and enhance staff integrity is already in place, and lifestyle audits are conducted to staff on sampling basis, usually on annual basis. At URA, the structure was reviewed to provide for fully fledged staff compliance division that commenced the lifestyle audit for staff, also provided for under the comprehensive integrity strategy. At ZRA, in 2020, they developed the anti-corruption strategy to fight corruption practices among the staff. They also established the investigation and staff affairs unit in 2023 in the new organizational structure. OBR has implemented an anti-corruption strategy for the period 2018 to 2023 and has an online service for denunciation of corruption and other corrupt practices. Number 7 is a recommendation for RS to develop data governance policy to promote the use of data for informed decision making. This recommendation was made in 2020, January. And this one is also a continuation of the presentation that we have just listened to. So briefly, KRA already have developed the policy. RRA also They are in the process of developing this policy. Also, TRA have developed it and awaits management and board's approval. URA developed and signed the policy, and they are even reviewing it at the moment. ZRA planned for development in this current fiscal year, while OBR, the development of the data governance policy, is also underway. Chair, that is the end of the presentation. Just to present some of those recommendations that came out of late out of the recent meetings, and just to show that the RS are really implementing these recommendations. Thank you.
Asante sana. Thank you very much, Joseph, for the comprehensive report on the implementation of the previous decisions taken by this fora. This was just for information, to appreciate also those revenue administrations that have implemented the decisions we've taken, and to encourage those that haven't also to move quickly and catch up with the rest so that we move together as a region. Thank you, Joseph. You can now take your seat, and I will invite the next presentation. Which is the integrity. The Integrity Forum presentation. On the program, I don't see who is presenting. CTI.
CTI first.
Okay. It is CTI. Okay. Let's invite CTI to come and present. Shedrack, sorry, to come and present. The CTI presentation. Okay, sorry, I had skipped that. So, Shedrack, you're welcome. Shedrack, you're welcome.
CGs, commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Osfred Job Cedric from EARACG, and I will be taking you through outcomes of what has come through from EARACG subcommittee. And briefly, EARACG is a subcommittee that comprises of commissioners of investigations and those of intelligence. And the key rationale for this was to foster intelligence and information exchange across the region, steer regional operations, and harmonize capacity building in the context of investigations as a function within revenue authorities. To date, the fora has intensified joint operations across the region, and there are a number of areas that have been piloted in this area. And to date, we have been doing work around construction. And out of the 8 cases, taking Uganda as a case study, we have had 11 million USD from about 8 construction companies, specifically in the area of road construction. There has been an enhanced exchange of intelligence and information, which has been able to steer the conclusion of cases under investigation and also facilitate conclusion of those cases that have been earmarked for investigation. Within the region also, the fora has been championing the use of science in tax administration through sensitization, workshops, training across the different revenue authorities, and we'll be highlighting some of the success stories that provide for justification for that. They have also gone ahead to develop a curriculum for investigators, and for purposes of ensuring that We cut down on the cost. We were able to affiliate the cost to ATAF, and we had the first cohort of 44 participants, investigators who undertook this training for the first module. And there's a second and third module that are under development alongside ATAF, and they will be rolled out soon. We have also been able to conduct a regional assessment on the maturity model to basically assess how robust our respective criminal investigations functions are. And we'll be highlighting some of the issues that have been accomplished in that regard. In relation to the use of science in tax administration, one of the aspects we have been advocating for is respective RAs to adopt this methodology. And we had very interesting discussions when we had the EARACG engagement on Tuesday and Wednesday. And KRA were sharing their experience, the way they have got a stalemate in implementing science, the use of science in facilitating tax administration, and were able to come up with probable solutions to help counter some of the challenges they were experiencing. Still using Uganda as a case study, we have the analytical science, where we undertake to determine the material composition of products, especially those at importation. I think this particular product here is used by customs largely, especially for testing the products that are being imported into respective jurisdictions. We have the component of applied science, and here we'll be looking at both manufacturing and construction. And in the area of manufacturing, basically we use the approach of input-output to determine how much raw material goes into a manufacturing process to generate a unit of output. And from work done so far from Uganda, we have been able to recover about 15 million USD from about 5 manufacturers. In the area of construction, because we know that there's a lot of inflation costs in construction, we have so far done about 8 cases in the recent past, and we have been able to recover about 11 million USD. Key to note that some of these approaches were challenged on the Ugandan side, and were able to win most of these cases. And I think that's the challenge Kenya had. And I remember they said they didn't have the use of input-output embedded in their laws, and we agreed that that should be part of the recommendation that should be taken for KRA to also have it embedded, and we'll just extract and see how to embed it in the Kenyan laws. Now, the key issues for consideration, especially under this area of science, is for us to be able to look at avenues of how best, sorry, can move the slide, yes. The key issue there for consideration for the CGs is how best we can ensure that science is adopted across the respective RAs. And here it's in terms of resourcing, but also the legal framework, because we saw that was among the challenges KRA was facing. So the resourcing aspect there becomes very key, and also pushing for skilled human resource in the area of science, and then of course the legal framework. Now, we said we are advocating for intensification of regional operations. And here, I already highlighted the fact that we have construction, which is already being undertaken. But we're also looking pushing into the areas of illicit trade in alcohol, because it's a problem across the region. We have the aspect of export fraud, which we want to look into, transit smuggling and dumping, and then the aspect of missing trader. I know yesterday the aspect of missing trader was partly discussed here when Rwanda was discussing the aspect of the EBM, but I know there's also another challenge of missing trader which is cropping up, where you have business people converting sales to final consumers, consolidating it, and I think it's basically a racket. They come together and agree. So instead of issuing those invoices, you consolidate those sales and convert it as if you've sold to a registered customer. So that's another aspect that is coming up. It's now, they are taking it a notch higher. Previously, it was that obvious that you would just sell out invoices, but now, because they know you, the respective RAs will come and verify stock, so they have decided to ensure that those products that are sold to final consumers are converted and demonstrated as if they have been sold to registered customers. So that's the other aspect that we'll be looking at specifically here. The other area that we have been able to look into is the aspect of assessing the maturity of our respective criminal investigations functions. And here we are getting support through OECD under the TIWB for criminal investigations. I know many of us here are familiar with Tax Inspectors Without Borders, but that one has been focusing on the auditors. Now we have Tax Inspectors Without Borders for criminal investigations, and that one specifically is looking at criminal investigations function. And you'll all appreciate that globally, tax evasion is taken as criminal. But many times the way we treat some of these fraudulent tendencies makes them to keep reoccurring. And I keep giving a very close example some time back when we were tackling a certain tax evader, and used the analogy in Luganda and said, "Teriye kitagwa," simply to mean that nothing never comes to an end. But I think what we need to be able to demonstrate how it ends, because then that will send a message out there and it will create a ripple effect in terms of compliance. So basically, the Tax Inspectors Without Borders under OECD is helping us do this self-assessment. And I think from what we have been able to gather, I think save for ZRA and Sudan, the rest of us have been able to do that regional assessment. And we'll be looking at how best we can support our counterparts also to making sure that they do this assessment. And we see how we learn from each other to address some of those gaps that we can address through comparison from our respective areas, especially in terms of maturity. Basically, this assessment is based on the 10 global principles of fighting tax crime. And as you'll appreciate, the first one is on the criminalization of tax crime. And it goes on to break down so many aspects, subcomponents in there. And what is assessed is not just the broad principle, but the subcomponents in there. So we'll be, in the interest of time, I may not be in position to go into the details. I talked about that being a parallel initiative. And basically, like I said, the assessment is intended to provide tax authorities with the ability to assess how robust their criminal investigations functions are, based on the 10 global principles of fighting tax crime. Again, just to drive the point home, those are the different assessment stages that are recommended by the TIWB framework under OECD. We have level 1 up to level 5. And in terms of nomenclature, you have nascent, emerging, progressing, established, and leading. Now, from the assessment that was done regionally, looking at the respective RAs, we had a few areas under nascent, a few under emerging, quite a number under progressing, and a few under established. We didn't have much, actually we didn't have any under leading. So what we agreed is there are aspects that we can support each other without necessarily even going into the resource envelope. There are things that we can replicate that are probably taking place in other RAs. We thought that would start by, first of all, supporting each other, and then see those aspects, because there are aspects that require change in legislation. We can move to that, but we agree that let's first sort out the basics and ensure that, as a bare minimum, we attain the established level of maturity. Like I said, we have already done the assessment for the respective RAs, save for ZRA and Sudan. And we are going to compare notes and see how best we support each other on some of the gaps identified. I'm just rushing through in the interest of time. Now, within the tax investigators curriculum, to enhance capacity in the area of tax investigations, like I said, we're advocating for this, and we have had this course affiliated to ATAF for purposes of funding as well. And ATAF has been able to train about 44 investigators. And we shall be rolling out the second and third module, which these 44 who have already undertaken the first module will be undertaking. And we hope that this will be able to help us foster capacity development among the investigators. Key to note is that we are doing this in liaison with our respective human resource departments, but what the fora here provides is just the technical aspects of the contents of the course. Now, in the area of the curriculum, what would mainly require from the CGs is nomination and facilitation of staff to attend the trainings, because from the feedback we received from ATAF, they will be funding, because they said this training might be physical, so they require us to have staff nominated, but also facilitate them in terms of the travel, because ATAF said they will be providing the trainers as well as the training facilities. So those are the tentative dates that have been earmarked for the second and third module of the investigators course. Now, in terms of summary of some of the issues that we require for consideration by the CGs, like I already highlighted, the aspects of setting up science functions across the region. We need the resourcing, but also support in terms of ensuring the legal framework is streamlined. Then resourcing in terms of facilitating the joint operations in those respective areas that we have highlighted. And then support in terms of implementing some of those strategies that have been identified to ensure that our respective criminal investigations functions are robust. Like I said, some of these areas require change in legislation, but also for people to appreciate the role that investigation plays in ensuring tax compliance is at its top. And then, of course, the last one being the nomination of participants, and basically that is what we heard from EARACG. Thank you so much.
Asante sana. Thank you, Cedric, for that report from the investigations, Tax Investigations Committee. We greatly appreciate the work done. And as you know, they met earlier and they went through a number of discussions, and what is presenting is their recommendations. Members, do you want to make any quick response by way of either asking for clarification or confirming that we are in support of the recommendations that he has just displayed, so that we close in, we tuck this in properly? I welcome any comments or reactions. And before we proceed, yes, Commissioner General, RRA.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, thank you for the presentation, excellent presentation. The subject of tax investigation is of great importance because it's one of the biggest contributors to ensuring tax compliance, taxpayer compliance, and therefore increased revenues for us, for all of us. So what I wanted to mention is, this is actually a question I discussed with CG Pascal back home. It's the issue of multinational companies that are established in member states of the community. There is a situation where we found ourselves where a specific company committed fraud, and then they closed shop simply. They have a lot of tax arrears that they were supposed to pay, but then they simply disappeared, but we are aware of the fact that they have branches in the region. So the question, in a nutshell, is, in this case, the crime is established, it's clear, but in terms of enforcement, in terms of recovery of the tax arrears, is there any mechanism that the EARACG can discuss for ensuring that taxes are collected by looking at the branches. You know, let's say entity A in, for the example, just is in Uganda, but then the related party to entity B, which is in Rwanda, and then entity B commits fraud or simply evades the payment of its tax arrears and closes shop and disappears from the country, while we know that entity A, which is in Uganda, owns 90% or even 100% of the shares of entity B, which was in Rwanda. What do we have a mechanism in place for ensuring that entity A, which is in Uganda, somehow takes full responsibility for what entity B has done, at least to the extent of their shares in entity B? So this is my question. Could we, if there's nothing in place, could we establish a form of legal framework or protocol for addressing these kind of situations that can happen in a regional, in a region like ours? Thank you very much.
Thank you, CGRA. That is a very important point. Any other comment, question? Yes, Irene.
I'm just wondering if we can utilize this platform to come up with a way of building capacity in this particular skill. Because, as mentioned in the beginning of your presentation, that at some point, some maybe nations are stagnated somewhere. But if we can leverage this capacity, those that have the capacity handhold others or are attached to even others, so that we build that capacity, working together, looking at what is involved in the investigation, possibly even the recovery could come through. But I think it's very critical for us as a region to harness this and take it to the front, because it's critical in tax administration, especially regarding fraud and any other tax revenue leakages. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Irene. I think those are the two questions that have come through. Comments. Now let's return to Cedric, some quick response.
Okay, thank you. The first one was on recovery of taxes on entities that have evaded taxes in other revenue bodies across the region. The legal counterparts can advise us on this. But what we agreed at technical committee level is that we will have seamless exchange of information on these entities. And part of the joint operations that we are going to have is